Hi, it's Mike Bogden, and today we're going to talk a little bit about sustainable fire safety procedures. A lot of people in Island Park or in other parts of the forest or just parts of nature where they buy a piece of property don't realize that they're assuming the responsibility for the properties that they are purchasing. Whether it's a prevention of fire, whether it's watching for the health of the trees, for all those different things, you're now responsible. Now, Mother Nature has a way of dealing with those same responsibilities, but that usually means the trees fall over on their own when they get old and weak, or there's a fire that crops up and cleans everything out by burning it all up. Unfortunately, if you have a house there, it doesn't go well. So that's why it's your responsibility to take care of your property. Do the things you need to do to make sure that your property is fire safe and that your buildings are protected from, from falling or burning trees and other vegetation. So with that in mind, we're going to go through a procedure of how to identify problems, how to fix or mitigate those problems, and then how to remove the different parts of the trees and so forth that we take down as part of this procedure. So stick with us and maybe you'll learn a little bit, and it'll help you get through improving your land, so it'll be not only more beautiful, but it'll be safer, and your trees and other vegetation will be healthier. So today I have with me John White, who is a employee of the Forest Service, and he's a fuel specialist. Hi, John.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm good.
Good.
So let's talk a little bit about this whole sustainable fire procedure that we're trying to promote within the forests of Idaho and throughout the country.
Sure.
So first of all, what are your concerns when you're looking at a piece of property, and as far as what are you looking for that you need to mitigate and bring to make it safer?
Well, so when we talk about fire mitigation, we're trying to reduce the fuels around that property or that value at risk. And when I talk about fuels, I talk about vegetation, like Mike mentioned earlier. It's the trees, it's the brush, it's the stuff on the ground that's fallen from the trees. It's all the flammable material, vegetation that could burn in a fire. And we try to mitigate the fire behavior, reduce the fire behavior by cleaning up the fuels that's either on the ground or in the air, to reduce the fire behavior, to protect that value or that house that we're either living at or we're residing at.
Okay, so when you first go into a piece of property, let's start from the ground up. So first of all, you look at a piece of property and you see there's a bunch of stuff on the ground, because there's always going to be dead branches, dead limbs, sometimes dead trees that have fallen over. So what do you look for as far as what kicks off the alarm bells and says, hey, we need to fix this kind of stuff?
Yeah, so if there's a bunch of branches that have fallen from trees and are now basically covering the forest floor, that provides basically a way for fire to spread from one branch to another across the forest floor. Okay. And so we can pick up those branches and put them in a pile and either take them away to the dump, or we can burn that pile, or we can chip it. There's a lot of different ways that we can deal with that stuff on the ground. There may also be a mat of needles, even just the needles coming from the trees. Okay. Fire may be able to spread through those needles and carry all the way to the house. So we want to make sure that we make a break around the house of that needle cast or of the branches, to prevent fire from spreading to the house.
Okay, now how wide would that, how deep would that break be for like the needles and that kind? Because obviously you're not going to break the whole forest, so right. So how much of a break would you have? So
we typically when we talk about standards, we use standards that have been developed for the wildland-urban interface, or WUI, if you've heard that term before. And some of these standards involve the distance directly adjacent to the property, the house. And so we talk 5 feet, typically directly surrounding the house to be clear of flammable vegetation.
Okay, all right. Good.
So clear of those needles, clear of dead trees, clear of branches that are dead and could start a fire right adjacent to the house and damage the house.
Okay. All right, now comes the hard part, because that nobody really has any emotional connection to stuff on the ground as far as the branches and the dead leaves and the pine needles. But as soon as you talk about trees, everybody thinks every branch is sacred, and every tree is something that should never be touched because we love trees so much. But those are the things that are the most dangerous for lighting up the forest if we don't take care of them. So let's talk about, first of all, let's talk about what they call ladder fuels.
Yep. So ladder fuels are basically that next step up vertically in height that we are concerned about. So ladder fuels, basically, it's called ladder fuels because it's a vegetation that acts as a ladder for fire to get up into the trees. And so the canopy of the tree, or the top of the tree,
okay,
would be the highest point. So you have your ground fuels, your ladder fuels, and then your canopy. And so those ladder fuels are those fuels that are intermediate, excuse me, in the tree. The branches about, our height, eye height or so, up to about 6 feet, that allow fire from the ground to carry up into the canopy of the trees. And so we can also deal with those fuels or that problem by limbing trees or taking out the smaller trees and eliminating those ladder fuels that cause that problem.
Okay, so therefore if you have a healthy forest around a cabin, it's best if the branches start about 6 feet above ground for the most part, other than young trees. So
yep,
you want to get your branches up off the ground. You don't want the branches to go all the way to the ground.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And a lot of the trees that we have here in Island Park, the branches do go to the ground. And so if we can get them up, 5 or 6 feet, and we say about 6 feet, that's about how high you can carry a chainsaw safely.
Okay.
So around 5 or 6 feet, if you can get the branches of the tree to start at that point and go up from there, then we can try to eliminate the risk of fire getting up into the higher part of the tree.
Okay, good. All right, that makes sense. Because if the fire's sweeping across the ground and it doesn't have anything to burn other than the trunk, the chances of the trunk's catching on fire and sending it up are a lot less than if you've got a bunch of dead branches and so forth on the bottom part. And usually, especially in the pine trees here, the lower branches die. Mm-hmm. And so they're usually really brittle and they're usually fairly dry, and they've got a lot of extra pine needles in them.
Exactly.
So they're kind of almost explosive.
More flammable, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so then we get to the part where we actually have the tree itself.
Yep.
And how to identify what we're looking for as far as, thinning out trees, what trees to take out, why we should be taking them out, and the advantages of taking out certain trees.
Right. So yeah, like I said, as far as the canopy goes of the trees, when you put a lot of trees together, then the fire can then carry through the canopy of the tree. If there's a strong enough wind, if the trees are dry enough, we're in the middle of the summer, and people have seen this before. We've seen it on TV where large fires will crown, as they call, because the fire moves through the crowns of the canopy of the trees.
Okay.
And so we try to make a fuel break, try to break up that crown or the canopy of the trees by taking out some of those trees and creating openings in the forest so that fire has a harder time moving from one crown or one stand of trees to the next.
Okay. All right. And so what are we looking for in the trees to make us decide what we want to take out?
So I typically start looking for the dead trees. If they're dead to begin with, then they're even more flammable than the other live and green trees around them. So I'll probably start by looking for the dead trees, or snags is what we call them,
okay,
and take those out. And then reassess, see what the canopy looks like at that point.
Okay.
If I've opened it up already just by doing that, then maybe I'm done. If I still need to take more trees out, then I'll start looking at those that may be damaged or have insects and disease issues with them that looks like they may die in the future, or that they may still contribute to fire growing up to or spreading up to the top of the trees.
Okay. Now, and then another thing too is that when you have a really tight cluster of trees together, then it's really not a healthy situation for the trees themselves.
Right.
Because the trees don't get enough sunlight, and so you really don't get the healthy tree. You get trees that are more stressed because they're competing for the same sunlight.
Yeah, it depends. There's a lot of tree species out here, and a lot of different species like it different ways. So we tend to get a lot of lodgepole pine here in Island Park,
right?
And they tend to grow very thick. We call it dog hair thicket because it's they grow just really small and really close together. And when you have that situation, then it creates a flammable situation for fire to come in there, and again, under dry and windy conditions, can just blow right through that because there's so much fuel all in one place for it to carry right through those stands.
Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to, in our next video, we're actually going to go through a piece of forest and start marking some trees, and then later on we'll go ahead and drop them and take them down and clear out some of the bad wood and so forth. And we'll actually give you a full representation of what you need to be looking for when you're working on your own property. And this will help with the whole fire sustainable procedure that the Forest Service is promoting, and we in Island Park as well, because we feel like the one thing that scares myself more than anything else up here is fire. I mean, I can deal with 20 feet of snow, I can deal with rain and sleet and mud season and everything else, but if it comes to a big fire, I got no answer. I mean, once it's going, and it's going to go where it's going to go, and we really like living in our cabins, and we really don't want to just end up with a fire pit. So from Island Park, this is Mike Bogden, and this is John White, and we wanted to say thanks for watching our videos, and hopefully this will help you in taking care of your own property and being fire safe. Thanks. Bye-bye.